The Woodlands Health and Rehab Center is the right choice for rehab at home. Our therapy department, with the assistance of our experienced clinical team, will transition you home quickly and safely. The Woodlands Health and Rehab Center, living made better.
Mr. Anthony, can I ask you one more question?
Sure.
Like the closest thing that I got. Say you win in November, okay? You know you head to Congress. Will you stand up to Donald Trump?
Oh, come on.
Because you know it's coming. And all the politicians can throw it under the rug. But will you have Robert Mueller's back when that letter comes to Congress? It's plain and simple. It's either a yes or a no, because you see what he done. You see what he done. He went from the football NFL to Heather Harris in Charlottesville. And you know what he stands for. And there's no need to go up there if you're not going to stand up to him, because you know he got to go.
So let me say it this way. Absolutely, do everything I could to protect the Mueller investigation. We don't know where it will be come November, and actually if I win, my term won't start till January. So hard telling what might transpire between then and now. But 100% would fight to make sure that every witness is interviewed, that the process runs its course, and the consequences fall where they may. Absolutely. The only thing I'll say that you might be disappointed in, I don't believe that, I am absolutely no fan of Donald Trump in any way, shape, or form. But I also am not somebody that I think right out of the gate on January 15th is going to be making my biggest priority to impeach him.
Right.
Because, for two reasons. One is, I think there's so much important work to be done back here that Trump might make harder, his policies might make harder, but nevertheless that I'll be focused on the 9th District. And the other is, to be honest, we are a country that has gotten so polarized, and I'm concerned about what an impeachment would do to further polarize things. I totally understand that he may well need to be impeached, but I'm also just frankly concerned about driving an even bigger wedge in a country that's already so divided. So I'm just saying, I know when you go in there in January, like he thinks like Maxine Waters and all them, that's the first thing he'd do. But if that paper come across your desk and you get the job of Congress, he got to go. Yeah. He didn't serve us the way he was supposed to. I feel he stole the election and trying to hide everything. You told 42,000 lies. Your poll numbers are down. And everybody know that's sitting here. Obama spent 8 years. If he had done this one fraction coming in, he would have been hanging from a tree. They wouldn't have cut him no slack. And that's what I can't understand. Why is it all the slack when you got Robert Mueller indicting people? You got Robert Mueller telling you he done something wrong. Like Spike Lee said, he had on a shirt that said, God protect Robert Mueller.
Good.
Yeah. So I think Mueller is the best shot. I don't think there'll be a big enough Democratic majority to impeach the president, because you need a 2/3 without Mueller presenting the evidence. So I think ultimately my job as a congressman would be to do everything I could to protect the Mueller investigation and any other criminal investigations that would go on. Yeah. You have a question?
Well, I have two questions.
Sure.
We have time. The first one, I would like to know, for our community here, I know it's part of the 9th District, when you walk through or walk down Main Street, it used to be thriving. Mm-hmm. Every shop was thriving. Now it's a ghost town. You might have a few little antique shops, a few little salons. It's not like it was. And we need jobs here. That's the economy, crime, the schools. Everything's affected by the jobs. Now, it seems like we're putting a lot of money into tourism. A lot of money. The Allegheny Foundation is putting grants into tourism. The trail is actually behind our house. And it's good to promote this area. It's not bringing jobs in. they've been promoting this tourism for years now. There's no jobs. I mean, you look at Clifton Forge, it used to be a ghost town. Now it's thriving bigger than Covington, and Covington's bigger than Clifton Forge. So I would like to know what your plans are. I mean, if the council, we both worked at Lear, it's a factory. The plant went out. We had to drive almost 3 hours a day to go to work outside of here, and a lot of other people did too.
Right.
And this is the norm now. We're not working here, we're driving hours just to go to work.
Right.
So we're really not making a decent wage, even though the factories are paying $15, $20 an hour. Most of your money's in gas.
Right. And let's be honest, $15 an hour is not a good wage in this day and age anyway.
This area
pretty bare minimum, even though a lot of people don't make that. That's not like you're well-to-do.
If you're not in production, you're not in healthcare,
Right.
you're not gonna get a job.
Right.
So I would like to know what your plans are here, because it seems like when their factory comes in, they're focusing on northern Virginia and not here. We would have to drive hours to a plant,
Right.
and that's not beneficial.
Sure. So it's a complicated issue, but let me try to cut to the chase as much as I can. First off, we need manufacturing jobs, and we should not buy the argument that a lot of high-flying economists and pundits make that the era of manufacturing is over for the United States. It's just not so. What I do believe is that manufacturing, we can get a different way of thinking about it, that it won't always be a plant that employs 1,400 like the paper plant does, or 2,000 like a Toyota factory. If we can get them, great. But the average number of employees of a rural-based manufacturer in this country is 25 people. Now, there's nothing wrong with Allegheny County having a half a dozen or a dozen small manufacturers that are employing 20, 40, 50 people. In fact, in some respects, it's better than one big manufacturer, because when you have more diversity, you're less vulnerable to one plant closing, as you experience, and as they just experienced in Salem, and as we just experienced in Bristol with Bristol Compressor. So, first part of the strategy is finding manufacturers, making things. They can be big, but they can also be small to medium size, and giving them the capital they need, or getting them access to capital. I talk about this a lot. The city of Bristol gave $54 million to a Cabela's to set up a couple miles, 5 miles from the downtown. $54 million in tax abatements. Now, that amount of money spread out among 500 local businesses would be $100,000 each. Why not use taxpayer money to invest in the manufacturers and the businesses that are creating jobs that are going to be here for 20 or 30 years, whether it's 20 people or 40 people or 50 people? We've got an example of this in Radford with the fellow, we visited his plant last week. He's employing 27 people. It's not a huge manufacturer, but it's growing, and he's producing these super insulated building panels that save people a ton of money and are better in a storm. That's a business that's going to grow. Let's use our dollars to invest in businesses that are going to grow and create products we need. That's the first thing, because we should not give up on manufacturing. Second thing is that I'm not a big supporter of tourism for the sake of tourism, but I do think that when cities pay attention to making their towns more interesting, we should say, it can attract new businesses. So you look at what's happened as an example. You mentioned Clifton Forge. Closer to me is Marion. Marion was just about a ghost town a decade or so ago. A lot of vacancies. Seemed like it was going down the toilet. Two things happened. One is the local economic development people decided they weren't going to let it happen and started really recruiting businesses to come back to the downtown. And the second thing was Emory and Henry College opened health sciences, a building school just outside of Marion proper, which brought in a lot of students and faculty, which then frequented the downtown businesses, whether they were restaurants or hardware stores or whatever. I do think that bringing our downtowns back with things like breweries and trails and all those amenities is part of how we attract entrepreneurs. It's part of how we keep our young people here who often have good ideas. So we need both. We need the manufacturers, and we need to invest in them so they can get a good start. and be competitive. And we need our downtowns to be interesting and attractive, especially to young people, because that's how you keep that energy here and how you get new generation of thinking. And when we do both those things, like they've done in Marion, they've done in St. Paul, they're doing it in some other places, then it starts to snowball. And it snowballs in a good way, not a bad way. Rather than going down like this, it starts to build up. And I don't see any reason why we couldn't have that same sort of strategy. I don't know exactly what the businesses would be, but I don't know why that same strategy couldn't work in Covington and couldn't work in smaller communities around the county.
Anything other than Walmart.
And now the second question.
Second question.
We have the No Child Left Behind, and that helps. But what's happening is so much information with these SOLs is being shoved down the children's throat, more or less, because the teachers are trying to cram everything in for the SOLs, and they're spending 2 or 3 hours a night doing all this homework, and it's too much. What are your thoughts on that? Because, I mean, what I'm being told by superintendent and different things in the schools is that the schools are more focused on skills, on what these children need to learn. But because of the regulations put in place, it's like they're strong-armed because they have to do this, and they just have to get in so much information. I mean, I know the times have changed. When we were in school, we weren't doing algebra in 3rd grade. And now, I mean, he's in 3rd grade right now, and it's just homework, homework, homework.
Yeah, yeah.
When they get home, they don't have time to go out and play. They got to start doing the homework.
Right.
So what do you think?
Yeah, I think what the federal government can do about it, because most school decisions are made locally or at the state level, here's what the federal government can do. One is fewer mandates and more money. Right now what the federal government does is through the Department of Education, through things like No Child Left Behind, and which was a Bush era thing, but during the Obama era we had a race to the top. What they shared in common was they were like a competitive grant process to sort of try to get schools to focus on and improve their test scores. And so the focus on SOL, standards of learning, became way overblown. And it makes the learning environment bad. My wife taught school for 30 years. I know a lot of school teachers. The teachers hate it, the students hate it. When you cram a bunch of facts into a kid's mind or a grown-up's mind, it doesn't last. It's just there long enough to get it out on the tests. When you allow kids to learn experientially with their hands, with outdoor education, with partnerships with businesses and organizations in the community through like mentorships, that's the kind of learning that really sticks, that really lasts a lifetime, because it's not just all up in their heads. So I think the federal government can model that by increasing the funding we give to schools, but not tying it to test scores. Just tying it to better paid teachers and making sure that the schools themselves have the adequate facilities that they need. And then what we really encourage is much more holistic learning, much more experiential, hands-on learning. Whether it's building skills for farming or for wiring and electricians, or whether it's kids going on to college. Kids who are going on to college also do better when they can learn with their whole bodies, when they can learn experientially. It's just a better way to teach. Right now, all the pressure is still on the standardized test. We need to move away from that, and we need to fund our schools. There's no reason why kids in Allegheny County or Scott County should be at a disadvantage from the day of their birth compared to kids in Fairfax County. It's just not right. And the federal government is the only one that can make up that funding gap so we have well-paid teachers who stick around.
Do you believe in elected school boards?
They're good and they're bad, you know. I think fundamentally, yeah, I think they're better than the alternative. But it's like elected judgeships, you know. The only problem with election is always theoretically the better route. But then you find that even in local races, people are starting to spend a ton of money, starting to buy ads, starting to spin the story. That's what I hate about it. That's what my hesitation is. I think it's usually better to have elections, but unless we get money out of politics and change all of that, we now have sometimes, you know, city government races that are costing hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it'll probably happen in school board races. It's nuts. But if we can figure out how to get the money out of it, then yeah, I think it makes more sense. Yes.
So, everybody, look at this list over here. The question of how much is ready to ask the thing. One thing I noticed missing, and I run into every time I talk about this election in this community, is you can't vote for a Democrat because a Democrat's going to take your guns. Gun rights are a huge issue around here.
Yeah.
So, curious where your stance is on that.
Yeah, and if everybody heard, he said that he often hears people say that they won't vote for a Democrat because the Democrat's going to take your gun. So, I'm somebody who thinks that we can seriously deal with our gun violence problem because we do have a big gun violence problem in this country, and at the same time, completely protect the Second Amendment. That's my basic belief. I think a lot of people fear that you can't do anything about gun violence without ultimately eliminating the Second Amendment. I think that's crazy. I think there's no reason to believe that, but people do. I get it. So what can we do? Well, I'm a gun owner. I'm somebody who supports the Second Amendment. I don't want to change that. But at the same time, I and most gun owners support truly universal background checks. So we can, that doesn't solve all the problems, but that would keep a sizable number of people who are now getting guns, who shouldn't be getting guns, from getting it. If we eliminated the loopholes and made it really universal, we would keep people who have perpetrated domestic violence or are stalking their girlfriend or are on the terrorist watch list or have other problems with, if not mental health, just flat out anger management that ought to keep them from getting it. Second thing we can do is we can reverse the prohibition on spending federal money to study the roots of the problem. So for 22 years, since 1996, it's been illegal to use public dollars through the Center for Disease Control or the National Institute of Health or anything else to study the issue. Why do we have so much gun violence in this country? What are the different causes? And what are the best solutions? We can't use taxpayer money to do that because the NRA and others managed to get that as a prohibitive for 22 years. Let's get rid of that prohibition and let's really put the best minds to work to figure this problem out. Not to wait, but to continue to study it. And then the third thing we can do, I think, well, two more. The third thing would be to start reining in the firepower. It's exactly what that line is, I don't know. But I have to believe that the founders did not imagine bump stocks and semi-automatic weapons and magazine clips that held 40 rounds. I don't think that was in their thinking when they passed the Second Amendment. So we ought to be able to begin to ratchet that down to a level that's reasonable for hunters, for recreational enthusiasts, for people who want to protect themselves. And then the last thing is there's things other than guns that we need to be focused on, like making sure that we fully fund domestic violence prevention and making sure that when usually women, but whomever is a victim of domestic violence, they have a place to go where they're safe, that we can really enforce the orders that are usually passed that go with that are supposed to keep somebody from stalking or otherwise. You know, all of those kinds of restraining orders and whatnot. So we need to beef up our protections there, and we also need better in-school treatment for people with issues and problems. Right now, often because of SOLs, we have a very limited number of school counselors, and a lot of those counselors aren't counseling, they're preparing their kids for tests. We need good counselors in schools who can both help the kids that are bullied, but can also help the bulliers, help the kids who are potentially violent to one degree or another, and make sure they get the help they need. We just don't have the resources. So I think if we take all of those steps, all of which are supported by the majority of Americans, we would make a significant dent in our gun violence problem, and we would not in any way infringe on the basic right to own a firearm. Now some people won't hear that, I know. But some people do. I've had people say to me, I'm a Second Amendment person, that's my issue, where do you stand? And I've said right back to them what I said here, and they say, I'm with you, I can go with that. So I think we can hopefully make that argument.
Do you think it's because when you said you're worried to cut the line off, that gun owners are worried that if you say today, I can't own a gun that has 40 rounds, that 2 years from now, you're gonna say, I can't own a gun that has 6 rounds. I mean,
Right.
you know, I worry about the snowball stuff.
Sure. No, I mean, that's been the argument for a long time. Long ago, one of the sayings of the National Rifle Association was registration leads to confiscation. So there is this general concern that I think it's excessive, but it's not completely unfounded. That the restrictions will keep getting tighter and tighter. I think that's definitely it's an issue. It's also because there is no magic number. You know, I have one weapon. It's a .22. And my little cartridge holds 8 bullets. So to some people that might be too many. To me, that's just enough that maybe I'll hit that groundhog before it gets away. You know, so what is the magic number? I don't know. That's why I say it's a complicated issue. But we ought to be able to have a public conversation and at least say bump stocks are not reasonable. And then maybe start there and see. But yeah, I think that's the concern, exactly what you said. You know, we have a lot more violence. We have a very, very high rate of gun ownership in this country. But even when you factor that and compare to some other countries that have high, not as high like Canada, we just have proportionally way more violence per capita than a lot of other countries do, than most other countries do. So that's why I think really taking a serious look at where that's coming from. It's partly the availability of guns, no doubt about it. We have so many of them and so many of them are so powerful, but it's more than that. We have other problems that lead so many men, it's usually men, to commit acts of violence in this country. We got to figure out why that is and try to stop it.